All right, we're live. Let me get started with your introduction. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 523, Black Tech Talk. Please hit the like button as you come in. Share the video if possible. Hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the community tab. There's a doc in the description beneath the video for you to follow along with. If you want to engage in the discussion, there'll be a link in the chat for you to click on. When you click on the link, make sure you raise your hand so that one of us can acknowledge you and advance you to the panel. Just as an FYI, we are offering mentorship for those trying to get into IT for the first time. And if you're trying to transition from one role to another, we do offer IT coaching. Leave a comment in the chat or at the end of the live stream. One of us can get back to you in regards of any sort of mentorship. All right. Actually, let me drop the link for you all because I think that that's really important too. Let me start off by giving some people in the chat a shout out. Maddox12, salute to you. Adrian Blackfire, peace to you. Sherrod Martin, peace. Adrian says, what's good? Don't update the switch. The last patch was garbage. I'm not sure what Adrian is referring to. Yeah, I'm not sure what he's referring to. But let's get started. We already wasted enough time. All right, so today's topic is about enterprise architects and DevSecOps. So we'll go into the first item on the docket from fastcompany.com, why government websites fail. This is going to be a long read. I'm not going to read all of it. I'm just going to go over what I think is important. Normally, lots of people go through their lives barely interacting online with the government. If you are a U.S. citizen, regularly pay taxes and don't need food, housing, or healthcare assistance, you are probably only annoyed when you have to do something such as apply for a passport or renew your driver's license. And even when you're even then, your annoyance level is minimal. But during a crisis, a lot more of the population suddenly needs the government's help, and they are then shocked, simply shocked, to discover that those interactions are mind-bogglingly terrible. If you are one of the millions of people who attempted to file for unemployment benefits, stimulus checks, or small business loans in any of the 50 states, you know of what I write. If you haven't had this experience, you are at the very least, saw the viral clip of the governor of New Jersey putting out a call on live TV for COBOL programmers, a language that hit its prime in the 1960s. The tech community had a good laugh at the New Jersey government's expense, and the rest of the world saw this as indicative of everything that is wrong with with government technology. The systems are ancient and held together with the language equivalent of brittle masking tape. The applications are onerous and take forever to fill out. Assuming you can even access an application, given the rate that government system seems to be crashing. Once you fill something out, there is no way to find out what is happening with your application. Yes, of course, you want to track it the same way you track a UPS package, and no, of course, you cannot do that. Those of us who have worked in the government and around government technology are not at all surprised by this state of affairs. Of course, the state unemployment systems are written in a 60-year-old programming language. Of course, there's no way to find out the status of anything you've submitted, ever. Of course, the websites are crashing. Government hasn't kept up with the times technologically for a number of reasons. Most significantly, a lack of market pressure to modernize and a failure to grasp the critical role that technology plays in delivering on the government's promises and policies. The first thing to understand is that while it might be funny that government relies on one of the first programming languages ever invented, the language alone doesn't mean that the systems must be terrible. If you understand what a user understands and what and wants to get done, you can design a good interface no matter what the technology you have, says Chris Reisbeck, an associate professor of computer science at Northwestern University, who used to code in COBOL back in the 1960s. There might be some popular techniques in modern user interfaces that some older languages might not be able to support, but you can use COBOL to make a web service these days, which means the front end can be any whizzy thing you want. The real reason government systems tend to be terrible runs much deeper than language. In the 1960s, the government, along with the private sector, began moving from being a solely paper-based organization to one that used computers. At this point, computers weren't supposed to be user-friendly, in part because that term hadn't been invented yet. People were happy they didn't have to write programs on punch cards, and that they could get computers to handle complex systems previously done manually. If it was complicated to get the computer to do that work, that was just part of the magic of the electronic age. It was an unspoken assumption that any computer program would come with a manual and probably training in on how to use the system. No one thought about how the general public might use these programs at home because the personal computer didn't exist yet. Then came the 90s. A lot of the world upgraded their old systems to more modern languages. Some did not. But suddenly, with modem speed increasing and the rollout of broadband and DSL, people had the ability to do things from their home computers that previously had been done either by mail, phone, fax, or in person. Around this time, two things happened in the private sector that did not happen in the government. One was that private sector companies saw that technology was critical to how they were going to be interacting with their customers and began expanding their tech teams to meet that need. In 1998, I worked with an advertising agency that maintained IBM's website. That is correct, IBM, which at that time was supplying 70% of the business world with computing power, did not have an in-house tech team maintaining its website. The advertising agency had a floor full of people who knew the popular coding languages of the day or had graphic design or user experience know-how. I don't know if those consumer-facing people existed at IBM or not, but when the CEO of IBM discovered he couldn't navigate to IBM's latest direct-to-consumer PC in 3 clicks on their website, it was easier to just ask the people who also designed their ads to also fix their website. At that point, websites were only starting to be seen as something more than a silly thing young people were into. So in 1998, IBM did not have an in-house team maintaining their website. Today, it has more than 100 people on its digital growth and commerce team who are responsible for all aspects of IBM.com. Other industries that also had to staff up robust in-house technical teams included banks, airlines, and insurance companies. Government, however, did not make the move to bring tech talent in-house. This is true at the federal, state, and local level. Yes, there were IT teams staffing up in government who did things like make sure everyone had email and that the printer worked. But government did not staff tech teams, in part because people in government did not see the growing connection between technology and delivering services for Americans. By and large, paper processes remained on paper and in-person processes remained in person. In some cases, this was because some government processes really do need to be conducted in person. A citizenship interview, for example, follows standard questions, but immigration officers also rely on a gut feel that can only happen in person. Interviews to help families find temporary housing are also an in-person process only, which allows caseworkers to not only better understand a family's needs, but also to feel out whether they are looking at a domestic violence situation. In some cases, government likely didn't move online because its processes were so old and complex that the idea of building a computer system to replicate these processes seemed like a Herculean task. In some cases, even when Congress passed mandates that required computerization, federal agencies didn't budge. In 1996, Congress mandated that the U.S. automate both entry and exit screenings into the country for foreign nationals. The exit part of this system still doesn't exist, despite at least 7 calls from Congress and the presidential administrations after 9/11 in 2005, 2013, 2016, and again buried in a notorious 2017 executive order last year that also included the Muslim ban. The mandate has gone unfulfilled in large part because no agency has had the technological expertise to even conceptualize such a system, let alone build it, no matter how much Congress may want it to happen. So I'm not going to read the rest of this because they've already made their point, but the point that I'm making here is that this is where enterprise architects come in, okay? This is where enterprise architects come in. As the article stated, the government is slow to move on a lot of things. They're just antiquated. There's a lot of Luddites who don't want those jobs that people have who have a pension. They don't want those jobs being replaced. They want to keep those jobs very simple and straight to the point. My perspective is that unemployment, the government unemployment websites for the states and the cities and stuff like that, it should replicate the threshold based on the population. You have a city or a state that has over 1 million people, you should be able to test, you should have enough resource scalability or elasticity to handle at least 2 million, okay? There's no excuse for that. But because like the article says that they were written at a time, you know, that was 5 decades ago, what are you going to do? But this is where the enterprise architect comes in. So let me go on to the next article. What? All right, next item on the docket is from CIO.com. What is an enterprise architect? A vital role for IT operations. So the article comes out at a keen time that we're having this conversation. Let me expand this out. The enterprise architect role. An enterprise architect is responsible for upkeep and maintenance of an organization's IT networks and services. As an enterprise architect, you will be responsible for overseeing, improving, and upgrading enterprise services, software, and hardware. You will also need to stay on top of the latest trends and technologies and keep an eye out for any software services or hardware that might improve business processes. This is what the government needed in New Jersey. Matter of fact, all state governments need somebody like this, an enterprise architect. Okay. The enterprise architect role requires complex thinking and strategizing to a certain which legacy systems can be updated, what software or hardware can be replaced, and which services or products will support business operations across each department. Enterprise architects work across the organization, determining the needs of a range of business units and processes. It's a role that requires strong communication and analytical skills to ensure that business units have the right tools to be successful. Enterprise architect jobs typically require an undergraduate degree in computer science or related field and 5 to 10 years of IT experience before you can step into the role. Depending on the company, you may also need a master's degree. To succeed in the role, an enterprise architect must have communication and analytical leadership, teamwork, and problem-solving skills. In a typical enterprise architect job description, you'll find most companies are looking for someone who has experience with SQL, data sourcing, enterprise data management, modeling, business strategy, auditing, and compliance. Other skills and expertise include cloud computing, system architecture, strategy, development, and enterprise solutions. And as an enterprise architect, you need to understand how to use and implement the enterprise architecture framework. It's not a formal framework that comes with step-by-step instructions on how to develop an enterprise architecture strategy. Instead, the framework serves as a guide on how to build a holistic view of all the technology in your enterprise. The EA framework will help you develop an enterprise architecture plan, EAP, to get a full view of your business technology, analyze where processes can be integrated or eliminated in the organization, and help you improve the efficiency and reliability of business information. There are several methodologies designed to help you develop an EAP that will help you meet your business goals. So TOGIF, the Open Group Architectural Framework, TOGIF is the most popular that you can find out here. The rest of them, I've heard of Zachman framework for enterprise architecture, but TOGIF is really the go-to. Federal Enterprise Architecture Framework, that goes without saying, that goes back to the last article we just read about, give me 1 second. About the government website crashing, and that is using a 60-year-old programming language called COBOL. That should never have happened. But again, bureaucratic red tape plays a role in all of that.
Oh, Mike, you stole it from me, man. I was going to bring that up here today on the whole website crash and the piece with the whole unemployment piece and how this thing crashed. It crashed for 3 days. It's exactly how it went down. But anyway, go ahead, man. You jumped on it already. Great, good stuff.
Enterprise architecture jobs can be lucrative. According to PayScale, the average enterprise architect salary is $131,824 per year, with a reported salary range of $93,000 to $168,000 annually. Pay increases with experience. Entry-level EAs with less than a year experience in the role report an average salary of $82,000 per year. As EAs gain more experience, they report higher earnings. Those with 1 to 4 years of experience report an average annual salary of $101,000. EAs with 5 to 9 years of experience report an average salary of $121,000. Those with 10 to 19 years of experience, 135,000 and 141,000 for EAs with more than 20 years of experience. The highest paid enterprise architects live in Seattle, where the average annual salary is 17% higher than the national median. New York is the second highest paid city for enterprise architects, where the average salary is 11% higher than the median, followed by Atlanta, where EAs earn 7% more than the median.
Well, hey, Mike, very quickly, would you kind of expand a little bit on as to why in Seattle would they be making a lot more than, even more than they would be making in New York City? There's a huge client out there that a lot of people work for. I don't know if you want to expand on that a little bit.
Microsoft, Amazon, and Oracle. So,
boom.
Those are hotbeds for tech out there.
Excellent.
All right. Enterprise architecture tools are designed to help businesses collaborate, build reports, and run tests, create simulations to manage, this is spelled wrong, to manage current enterprise architecture and any future technology that it might bring into the business. EA software that can help visualizations, organize data, catalog IT assets, and help with interdepartmental communication. This is where the New Jersey governor was looking for. Although he was vague in what he was saying about COBOL, he's really looking for enterprise architects, okay? Someone who can walk into their environment, look at it, look at a topology that they have from the 1960s or the 70s or whenever that thing was developed, and tear that thing apart and build something new on top of it. There are plenty of EA tools to choose from, but a few popular options include, I'm not going to go over those. Enterprise architecture certification. There are several ways you can get certified as an enterprise architect. You can opt to get certified in specific skills, frameworks, or tools. For example, the Open Group offers TOGAF certifications, which is a popular EA framework used in business. Or you might choose to get certified in specific tools like Salesforce or Google Professional Cloud. Either way, there are several certifications you can earn in training courses and workshops you can attend to brush up on EA skills and knowledge. So it's interesting that they bring up some of these certifications here. Dell EMC Proven Professional Cloud Architect. If you're going to work for Dell, if you're going to be a consultant for Dell, that might make sense. But you never want to limit yourself down to a brand. You want to kind of stay vendor neutral, because what's happening here is that you pigeonhole yourself into one platform, and you don't really want to do that. Google Professional Cloud Architect, that makes a lot of sense too. Cloud, enterprise, they're kind of synonymous now. You really don't say enterprise architect, you'll probably say a cloud architect for that matter. Red Hat Certified Architect, that goes without saying. 80% of your servers and infrastructure in most organizations run on Linux, okay?
And these jobs are going to be exceedingly plentiful coming up in the next few years. They're big now. They're only going to get bigger. So well, Mike's on right now. I can tell you, I'm getting some new clients of mine that are going to be directly right on that line. I already got a machine learning position that I'm fairly close to filling for a client in Albany. But there's a lot of other stuff that we're going to get. I'm just getting some emails in as people are moving past this COVID thing and staffing up. But I see people are cutting back on some staffs in some other areas, but IT is going to be staffing up. So, just want to let you people know that. And yeah, that's great stuff, Mike. Just keep going, because these jobs are going to be increasing over the next few years, not decreasing.
Yeah. The Open Group TOGAF 9 certification, the most popular enterprise architects certification. So you can't mention enterprise architecture without talking about TOGAF. They have the foundation exam, and then they have the professional level exam. So you take the foundation first, and then you go to the professional level exam. My understanding is that very few people have the professional level exam. Everybody who's in enterprise architecture has the foundation exam, but the professional exam is something that's a little bit more difficult to get. AWS Certified Solution Architect, that goes without saying. Cloud enterprise architecture, cloud architecture, you can't talk about too those two terms without mentioning AWS at this point. CISSP, Information System Security Architecture Professional. That is, the architecture professional is a add-on additional to the already certification for CISSP. So what's happening here is you get the CISSP, but then you also add something additional to it, which is engineering, management, and architecture. So that goes without saying. I don't know too many people who go after the architectural professional. Most people I know in enterprise architecture are either AWS, Google, or Red Hat, or they're TOGAF. They're one of the four, but they're never the first or the last. So that's what is hot right now in the market. You got 50 states with 50 different systems in place. It's a disaster, okay? It's a disaster, and most governments need this. Think big. Think about Latin.
That's a fact. I just want to just.
Go ahead.
No, man, you're crashing it right in the head. Most of these states that you're dealing with, and most of you are still 20 years behind the times, especially a lot on their back end, big data, with holding their big data storage systems. They are behind the times massively, and many of them have to upgrade and migrate over to a lot of different stuff, and they don't have it. So that's why I'm saying that as this time, I mean, you still have COBOL. That's the problem that you had with New York State. You still had COBOL, CICS, DB2 backend. I mean, this shit. And they're trying to front end it with Java and some other stuff that they're using for with various graphic user interfaces. But yet they don't have, in some respects, robustness to handle a lot of traffic, a lot of information flying through. These guys are behind the times. And these are most states. New York State's a fairly wealthy state, where they can make some of these upgrades. They haven't done it. What about other states that are not? Way behind the times, a lot of opportunity all over. So we are looking at archaic stuff that is still around, and it's still going to, unfortunately, still going to be around for some years. I remember somebody telling me, this was 20 years ago, damn near. I said, this COBOL stuff is getting old. He says, this shit ain't going nowhere. And this was back in like 2000, 2001 when we were talking about this stuff, and said, that this stuff is not going anywhere and it's going to still be around because they won't have anything to replace it. And here we are 20 years later and we're still dealing with this. It's unbelievable. But this is where we're at.
Yeah, that's true. That many governments are still spinning their wheels on how to get out of this position. But as the article is stating, for certification standpoint, Google Professional Cloud Architect, AWS Solutions Architect, Microsoft Azure Architect, these are now becoming frontline and center. And
that's exactly correct. Exactly correct.
Yeah, you don't need all this legacy hardware that they're spinning their wheels on.
Exactly.
And so
it's still out there. That's what's shocking. That's the only thing I'm saying. Wow, it's still surprising this stuff is still out here and crashing on people. It's still out here. It's fucking crazy. But anyway, go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because you're talking about taking a house that a Victorian house and then dropping a new house on the same foundation.
Crazy, man.
And so it's difficult because if this does not work, and you're the CIO or the CISO or not the CIO, the CTO.
You're done.
You're finished. Highly finished.
You're done. So what you're saying is that there's a fear factor, which I would totally agree with. That there's fear for certain people to change. Well, it's working so far, so let's just keep it there, because they don't want to make, they want to make a big risk change, spend a lot of money, then something go wrong, and then their ass is on the street, and then that'll follow. That'll be like a red letter. Oh, this guy tried to do this or whatever, and he fucked everybody up, and next thing you know, you're in a world of hurt. So I understand where some of that goes, but I have to say, as a technology guy, as someone who's been in this business since '96, literally, really at various levels, first, in the brokerage end and on the back end on this stuff, and then getting into the business technically myself, 2005, it was kind of shocking that some of this stuff is still around, where people were predicting its end years ago, and it still isn't. And we're in 2020. which is wow. But yeah, but the search, all the big stuff that this article's talking about is dead on the money. But I'm still surprised that we're still dealing with CICS and DB2, all this back end shit. It's amazing to me. It's like amazing that this stuff is still like kicking. It's not like dead. It's still kicking. Wow. Anyway, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, and so what's happening here is that it's hard to find a system, or it's hard to find a replacement to these archaic systems, because if the system's not broken, don't try to fix it, is the rule of thumb in IT. I was at an organization years ago, probably about 10 years ago, and they had these old Nokia IPS servers sitting in one of their racks. No one knew what it was. No one knew what it did. They said, just leave it alone, leave it right where it is. Nokia stopped building servers years ago. Okay, that was back in the 90s they did that. Today, there's no support for that. And so if somebody touches it and it fails, it's on you.
How would they still get that stuff service?
It just runs.
Yeah, I don't want to laugh.
Because where you're going to get the hardware, the power supplies, the memory, the logic board, who's going to support that? So nobody really wants to touch it. No one wants to own it. No one knows where it came from, who owns it. It was at a time in the 90s where companies were building out their technology portfolio, and they adopted all these new technologies, and then those people left, and the dot-com boom in 2001 and 2008. No one knew what to do with it. They left it alone. I looked at this thing and I said, that is a ticking time bomb. If that fails, you are screwed. So what happens when they do LOM, lights out management, or disaster recovery planning, and they shut down the power in the building? Somebody has to make sure that battery stays on that Nokia server, because
that shit goes down.
Who knows the password to it if it needs to be logged back in? It probably ran Novell or something like that.
No, yeah, exactly. Novell. Wow, that's old. 90s. We're going back 98, 99.
Yeah, so that type of stuff happens. So that's why enterprise architects are really important. I know a few brothers who are enterprise architects, man. They're really, really diligent about what they do. You know, it looks like it's boring work, or it looks like, well, I could just go in there and do what this guy does. Not exactly. You can't just walk into this guy's place of work and think you can replace him. He is very integral with the organization. He knows everything about it. He understands the process, and the company's pretty satisfied with what he has to offer, or what she has to offer. So enterprise architects usually are associate directors of information systems, or director of information systems, VP. Those people are the ones who drive the process. That's what enterprise architects do. They drive process. So
great points.
So think about this from a global perspective. A lot of your Latin American governments, a lot of your African governments came out of colonialism about 20, 30, 35, 40 years ago. They're still using a lot of the colonial systems that were in place, IT systems, because those systems were designed at a time when colonialism was right for the oppressor. So they are struggling to get off of these old systems, because if it wasn't broke, they weren't going to try to fix it. They just assumed the position of head of state, and they left the systems in place, intact. And so when you have an underdeveloped state that doesn't have enough knowledgeable people to take on those responsibilities, what happens? Those systems just sit in place. Like the corporation I mentioned about 10 or so years ago, that system just sat in place. Nobody really touched it.
And Mike, you're ridiculously correct about that. And that was one of the reasons why I did business with the Bank of Brazil, because we were, they were totally upgrading their systems. They still had a lot of legacy back end stuff that's still there. But their front end game, they were moving now towards Java, and it was all about Java development, front end, back end developers. Now it's not even so much front end, back end in Java. Now it's just you just got to be a Java developer, and front and back end, is almost synonymous. So you got to have you got to know those both without even thinking about it. But back when I was kind of doing a lot of for the bank at the time, that's exactly the kind of people we were bringing in, and they were front ending still a lot of that of that back end legacy system stuff that was there, and it's still there now. This is with the Bank of Brazil and Safra Bank as well. So, and these are the largest banks that you're talking about, or of the largest banks, or certainly the Bank of Brazil, a state-run bank, certainly by Brazil, and Safra Bank is a private bank, but still it plays a large state role. And then you have others like Santander and some of the others that are Spanish and Spanish banks or whatever, but still. That exactly what you're talking about. So we were doing a lot of Java developers and doing a lot of front end development, but the back end stuff was still there, and it was there for I can't tell you how long it was. I'm thinking, man, a lot of that crap is going back to the 70s, 80s. I swear to God, it's that's what they were dealing with. So big stuff there. And I still don't know if they fix it up, because I've tried to get back in with the bank after all that, and they've been real slow to move, and they made some changes, and there've been a lot of things going on with them. But I suspect that's still there. It's still going on right now. And this is, Brazil may not be third world fully, because when you get to the real upper crust of it, they're certainly not third world, but they have they've got a third world element, and they're not moving, and they're not there. So I got to figure a lot of other countries, and I would even think some in Europe are still operating like that as well. Certainly Norway, Sweden, and so forth. I think, even though they've gotten a lot of the high end development. I'm sorry, am I breaking up?
No. Go ahead and finish. I'll just come after you.
Oh. Yeah. So I know a lot of them are there, and I know that certainly Unix, all that came out of there. Those guys really got some stuff going. But I suspect that that's in a lot of places around the world. So I would say, for those who may be getting into this and want to travel around and get around the world a little bit, I think the opportunities are wide open to you. I mean, wide open.
Yeah. Because the thing is, those antiquated systems are not going to be salvageable for new processes. They're just out of date. I know companies that were still rolling with Windows Server 2008. It's now 2020. The life cycle support for it is already expired. Windows 7. This is in the United States, a first world country. Okay, Windows 7 is still being used in a lot of places, even though the support ended in January. A COVID pandemic makes it more difficult for them to even think about upgrading, because they just don't have the resources. Okay, most of your Latin American countries, if you could look at the environment, and you can also attribute that to their technological development as well, that they're just not there yet. They don't have the money they don't have the money to splurge, and so that becomes a problem. So it's important that when you think about this, you got to think, how do I deliver services to them and make a name for myself and turn a profit and do good by these people in my namesake, and on their behalf, right? You want to have good rapport. This is about, global tech is also about diplomacy. You want to make sure you're being diplomatic in your attempts to, be integrated in these sort of, these other states and stuff like that. Because if you mess something up, man, there could be some other consequences for you that you may not want.
That's right. That's right. And what he's talking about, you're in places like Singapore, some of these other countries where this may go wrong, something crazy might happen, billions of dollars getting lost or something else like that, you're going to die. So, so that's, so it's quite serious. But a lot of these countries, they want to be enterprise wide, almost just like the United States, on the same systems. Makes things a lot easier for them to innovate and do business. So that's what's going on. There is a kind of a performance kind of game where everyone's gonna want to be someone on the same systems, man. And it's a big push for that. Certainly in the Western world, and I would say Asia as well. And certainly South America. And in South America say Brazil is probably more up to date. They were on Windows 7 when we were doing that, and that was new for them. And I don't think they've upgraded since. I don't think they have.
Well, it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me. When I was in South Africa, they were still using Windows 7 over there. So Windows 8. Windows 8. So it doesn't surprise me that they would still be doing that. It's not a priority to them right there until a cybersecurity attack happens, or or until the support runs out for those systems. All right, let me jump to the next item on the docket. This is from redhat.com. From sysadmin to DevOps. Transitioning from sysadmin to DevOps will have a cost in time and effort, but will be worth it. Your benefits will include new skills, advanced tools, and fresh perspective. The system administrator role is one of the most diverse and complex roles in IT. A sysadmin needs to know about operating system, networks, and databases, but also about budget, support, and operations. So we'll get into a little bit of that deeper later. The sysadmin position has been evolving as organizations evolve too. In recent years, organizations have been incorporating new models to bring products to the market quickly that permits them to keep pace with world innovation. Historically, sysadmins and developers have taken different positions about how to push products to production environments. Sysadmins are responsible for keeping the production environment up and running and dealing with service level agreements, SLA. Developers want to push new versions to production as soon as possible to incorporate new features into applications. Those new features could break production systems and have an impact on SLAs. That's probably what happened to the New Jersey government. It is for this reason that new approaches like DevOps are better positioned to deal with those problems. DevOps, modern sysadmins need to be aware of DevOps practices in order to take advantage of those approaches and participate in the general improvement of their organization to produce better applications and reduce their software products' time to market. DevOps is intended to be a cross-functional mode of working that brings together different teams and breaks silos into organization, okay? There was some talk about DevOps before in the manosphere where they said, well, the DevOps is a great role. No, DevOps is a cross-functional mode of working. It's a methodology. You're not DevOps. DevOps is the practice, okay? You have a role within the DevOps organization.
Yeah, that recruiter that person, I'm not sure he was on.
Yeah.
He was clueless. Anyway, I'm sorry.
It is important to identify the key aspects of DevOps for development and delivery processes, which permit to incorporate short iterations to push code frequently to production supported by automated processes with the goal of increasing the quality of code and reduce negative impacts. So this is working at speed. So basically the old project management model was you kind of meet every week and you kind of go over what you've achieved through the week. No, with DevOps, it's by the minute, okay? Updates by the minute. The following figure shows the DevOps lifecycle and represents the continuous integration, continuous delivery, and continuous deployment process. So if we start from here, it starts from integration or continuous integration to deployment, continuous deployment, and then to operate, and then to, sorry, I'm sorry, I should have started from the left because it always starts from the left. So you plan first, build second, third is continuous integration, CI, and then CD is continuous deployment, and then operate, and then continuous feedback in the loop. This is a continuous loop, okay? It's a continuous loop that works very well. That's the DevOps process. To facilitate DevOps adoption and transition between each phase, it is important to be aware of the following DevOps values, principles, and practices. DevOps values, culture represented by human communication, technical processes and tools, automation of processes, measurement of KPIs, sharing feedback, best practices, and knowledge. Oh, why does this keep shifting? So those are the values of DevOps. The principles include develop and test against a production-like environment, deploy with repeatable, reliable processes, monitor and validate operational quality, amplify feedback loops. So if you go back up here, the feedback loop is right here, continuous feedback, okay? And the practices include self-service configuration, automated provisioning, continuous build, continuous integration, continuous delivery, automated release management, incremental testing, okay? Remember, I said earlier that DevOps works by the minute. So incremental testing, you're always testing, you're always in an ongoing phase of development. The old project management model, the PMP model, you met once a week. You discuss what you've learned, what you've done, and then what you're going to do and what you've learned. That's an old process. That does not work in the modern world. Okay, DevOps completely obliterates all of that whole entire process, including with Agile too. Agile actually obliterates the old project management model too. It's just not sustainable for new world development. And a lot of this DevOps stuff came in at a time when the iPhone app development came into place because of the frequent updates that you can push out. Okay, and Android as well. Google played a significant role in that. Key aspects to take into consideration transitioning from sysadmin to DevOps involves a learning curve to develop new skill sets or improve existing ones. As a general reference, the DevOps roadmap provides a step-by-step guide for DevOps or any other operations role. It is intended to give you an idea about the landscape and not to encourage you to pick what is hip and trendy. This is true. In the next sections, we will explore some key aspects that could help to succeed in this transition. I'm not going to go over all of these. Because I think that, if you're a sysadmin now, this is exactly your next logical step is to get into DevOps. I'll just go over the key talking points and then we'll close it out. Getting version control. As a sysadmin, you are producing code and documentation on a daily basis. Maybe you already use a versioning control system, but if not, Git is a great option. So GitHub is a very fundamental platform for those who code. And so they upload their code to GitHub, and then there's a repository that your systems will connect to and pull that code down and then complete that process. So there's continual integration, CI aspect in Git. From pets to cattle, changing from pets to cattle is a core mind shift about how to organize and interact with infrastructures. The analogy of pets versus cattle has become one of the core aspects of DevOps, of a DevOps service model. Pets are each vitally important, but cattle are interchangeable. This alludes to the concept of immutable infrastructure, a paradigm in which servers are never modified after they are deployed. So we talked about immutable infrastructure on the blockchain live stream a few weeks ago. So they're actually referring to this, okay? So servers are never modified once they leave. You build new. Remember I said before, you work at speed. If whatever you pushed out before, you don't go out there and patch that, you just roll out something new immediately. If it's broke or it doesn't work, roll out something new that does work. That's how the DevOps model is, okay? Typically, as a sysadmin or a network admin, you kind of played it safe. You didn't upgrade that Cisco router or firewall, whatever it was, unless you got approval, or same thing with Windows Server or something like that. You didn't roll out patches because without a formal change management process. With DevOps, you don't do that. You kind of just roll it all out. And if it's broke, you come back and fix it again. Logs and observability. When scaling services, centralized logging becomes more important because storing logs and metrics externally allows debugging even when shell access is restricted or after a server has been destroyed. Also, it contributes to improving security while preserving traces in the event of a server being compromised. Yeah, so Logs and observability. This is about having deeper insight and visibility, monitoring. Idempotency in automation. Idempotence is a property of certain operations in mathematics and computer science whereby they can be applied multiple times without changing the result beyond the initial application. If we apply this to programming, it means that the end state remains the same no matter how many times the code is executed. This concept has been usefully implemented into configuration management tools. Configuration management tools enable changes in deployments to be faster, repeatable, scalable, predictable, and able to maintain the desired state, which brings controlled assets into an expected state. Let's say, okay, so the configuration management, like Puppet is a configuration management tool. If you build it once and deploy it, that's kind of how it works. But it's also scalable. So if there's, let's say the government website in New Jersey, the government's website, unemployment website, it wouldn't have failed. The site wouldn't have went offline. It wouldn't have failed. It would have just scaled up. And that's what we call elasticity, because instead of having one processor or in some memory, 4 gigs, 8 gigs of memory, it would have scaled up completely to a behemoth, like a supercomputer, okay? And then it would have constricted down to the bare minimum that it needs, so it's not overutilizing resources, okay? If we know that we're gonna get 100,000 hits to the government's website, then we're gonna start to scale out, okay? That's a part of the process. That's where the government failed. They did not have these sort of systems and mechanisms in place. Automation is the ultimate need for DevOps practice. And automate everything is the key principle of DevOps. Automation in DevOps is ultimately encapsulates everything right from building, deploying, and monitoring. So automation in DevOps, you cannot be a DevOps person and not believe in automation, okay? Some automation advantages: removes manual errors, team members are empowered, increases the number of deliveries, reduces the lead time, increases frequency of releases, provides faster feedback, enables speed, reliability, and consistency. Yeah, they work at breakneck speed, okay? This isn't like the old process where you met once a week and you sat in a room or something like that, conference room, and you kind of went over things that really weren't that important. You meet once a day in DevOps, okay? You might meet multiple times a day, but you usually meet at least once a day. Security by default. Information security consists basically of being aware of the value of our information assets, identifying the threats and vulnerabilities that they are exposed to, and reducing the risk level, implementing countermeasures with the goal of preserving confidentiality, integrity, and availability, CIA. There are standards that could help to accomplish this goal. Keep in mind that information security is an important process that needs to be part of our organization and be incorporated in every aspect of software development and infrastructure operations, including security automation. Cybersecurity is much more than a matter of IT. This is very true, okay?
Very accurate.
Yeah, cybersecurity is an ongoing process of the business. Okay, you can't have a business without cybersecurity. It's impossible. Security by default in software means that the default configuration settings are the most secure settings possible. Some of the references that could be interested in are the 20 CIS controls and resources and benchmarks, where you can find security controls and practical hardening guidelines, guides for several operating systems and applications. Conclusion is sysadmin to DevOps transition could be easier or harder depending on your current background and practices. For sure, it will have a cost in time and effort, but will be worth worth it if you foresee the future benefits of this new skills, tools, and mindset that will bring to you. So Python is very important in DevOps. Most people in DevOps know Python. They're not experts at it. They just know enough to do their job. So Python is very important. C# is very important, and Java is very important. Okay, those three languages are very important in DevOps, and Bash, born again shell. So Linux, knowing the Linux command line, very important. You're going to spend 80% of the time in Linux. That's just the way it is, unless you work with Microsoft Azure and you're working in Windows. But even Azure is basically a spinoff from Linux for all intents and purposes. You spend a lot more time in command line than you do in GUI. Right? So let me get to the next item on the docket. Adrian Blackfire says, Mike, MS Vista dropped the ball that hard people that had people cling on to Windows 7. We have 2008 and R2, and the patching cycles are rough. A lot of recovery mode, but Windows Server 2016 server patches are rough too. Yeah, yeah. Because they don't do service packs anymore. They kind of just roll out updates every Tuesday. That's kind of how they roll it out now. Yeah, Music Black says Python is a big part of network automation. Yep. All right, this is from GitHub. Coincidentally, we just went over that. How to build an effective DevSecOps culture. I'm not going to go over all this. DevOps, SecOps, now DevSecOps. While the DevOps, we all know, brings development and operation teams together, DevSecOps adds another process even high-performing DevOps teams can miss: security. By prioritizing secure development alongside speed, DevSecOps helps you ship safer applications by making security part of your current DevOps pipeline. It's more than checking off security vulnerabilities or sorting through false positives. Here's how you can build a DevSecOps culture that makes a difference for your code and customers. Secure applications depend on developers fixing as many vulnerabilities as possible during the code review before they can make it to production. But too often, security tools serve up false positives, forcing developers to spend time trying to fix vulnerabilities that don't actually exist. We've heard time and time again, high false positive rates are the top reason why developers struggle to tackle vulnerabilities while they build. Constantly stopping to address these security concerns only to find a false positive forces developers out of their workflow. Instead, taking a developer-first approach to security means meeting your team within their workflow. The goal of a successful DevSecOps culture is to identify bugs and resolve them as you build or fail fast. You fix it and you move forward, because guess what? It takes you a minute to solve that security issue in development when it could potentially take you hours or days to fix in production. This is very true, okay? You shift left in DevOps, you shift left with security. Security and compliance is always at the front of the development. It's never at the production side, okay? Building trust between your security and DevOps teams isn't just about deciding when and where you solve vulnerabilities. It's about which results you prioritize and why. All bugs matter, but some bugs matter more. When Facebook added high-quality static analysis results to their developer workflow, The fix rate reached an unprecedented 70%. Yet when the bugs were presented to the developers outside of their workflow as a list of problems to fix, the fix rate was zero. Why? The drastic change. This speaks back to prioritizing a workflow that's developer first, but the real bugs that had the most critical impact equaled more bugs fixed over time. Developers knew they weren't being served a list of false positives and quickly incorporated bug fixes into the workflow. As the number of false positives went down, the number of real bugs being fixed went up. So they had more time to really chase the real meaningful work rather than the false positive work, things that really wasn't happening. False positives happen. It's what you do with them that can make or break your DevSecOps culture. For John Perez, engineering architect at Pinterest, automation has helped bridge the gap, ensuring that the right bugs are found, but also actually fixed. With automated security updates, not only are security vulnerabilities identified, but we are presented with a solution that enables us to quickly fix the issue, Perez explained. And their new approach has even impacted other non-DevSecOps teams. This workflow has been a great reminder for us to constantly audit our internal software for similar vulnerabilities. So the workflow actually helps keep them up to speed when it comes to security matters, because they can find the vulnerabilities within the certain parts of the life cycle, especially at the planning and building stages of it. Whereas before, with traditional software development, SDLC, software development lifecycle, you didn't find the vulnerabilities until until the production level, where the software is already deployed. That's why with Microsoft, you see that, with Windows XP and Windows Millennium or whatever it was that they put out, it will constantly putting out service packs, constantly putting out patches, because all the vulnerability, they had an acceptable level of vulnerabilities that they were going to produce, that was going to be produced, and they knew it, and they accepted it. It's called acceptable risk. And so when they put the operating system out there and you first plugged it into the network, you will see a stream of updates come down. Well, that's because there was already a list of vulnerabilities that they knew existed and that they were willing to accept. But with DevSecOps, that wouldn't have happened. They would have found all these bugs at the development, at the beginning of the development. Break down bad habits. Still prioritizing high quality bugs can be easier said than done. False positives have become part of software development, with many teams finding ways to simply work around them. If you're overwhelmed by bad vulnerability reports, the easier answer is to shut off vulnerability reporting entirely. Stick your head in the sand, basically. If you can't trust your static analysis, why resolve vulnerabilities at all? Static and dynamic analysis testing is very important in all of this, so you need it. Effective DevSecOps requires breakthrough bad habits in your current software culture and finding new ways of working. The easiest place to start is with the tools your development and security teams can actually trust. Or in lead cybersecurity engineer Sydney Sweeney's case, tools their Dow Jones developers already know how to use. Providing a similar developer experience from local development through deployment helps prevent passwords from being pushed into the code. Make security for everyone. Make security an everyone effort. Yeah, this is true. I'm not even gonna bother reading this. Basically, everybody is responsible for security, whether it's awareness, implementation, or reporting. Everybody has a role in security. So that security just becomes a part of the culture. It's a part of DevOps culture too, because in DevOps, everything security and compliance and regulation shift left. So it shifts to the beginning of the cycle and not at the end of the cycle. And so that's the role of DevSecOps. In my experience in working in DevSecOps, basically, I was a security person within that organization on multiple operations that was going on. So it does get busy. I mean, I don't know of anybody who ever worked in it, but it's definitely a busy sort of process. Let me get to the next item on the docket, and this is the last one. All right, this is from the newstack.io. The new stack context: who owns security in the DevOps process? DevSecOps does. Okay. Tal wrote an article for us recently, DevSecOps Insights 2020, who really owns the security in DevOps, which summarized the results of a survey the company carried out covering security development and operations. The post included a couple of surprising survey results, namely that only 14% of respondents reported that they test for known vulnerabilities in container images, and 38% of respondents don't integrate automated security scanning into their DevOps pipeline. This is a big problem, okay? That's why you have DevSecOps, because in DevOps, they just produce code, okay? They produce code and they fire off new deployments on a constant basis, but their lack of security oversight and governance is absent. Not because they're incompetent, but because they don't have a owner within the organization for security, and so that becomes a part of the problem. And if they keep putting out code that's vulnerable, bad guys figure this out. They pop your system and all your sensitive information and PII that may be in there leaves you screwed, and now you're the next university study case of a company that just been breached. Big problem. When that many respondents agree security is a major concern when trying to deliver software quickly, it means we need to scale up security to enable fast delivery of security fixes. The key to doing that is developers, as they ultimately fix security issues in an application source code. We also get Tal's view on incorporating security into continuous integration, continuous delivery, CI/CD, the need for development speed, as well as his thoughts on the recent purchase of NPM by GitHub. So we just went over this before the last article, but he's kind of alluding to what the confusion is about security in IT and more importantly in DevOps. Who owns it? Who's responsible? Where does it lie at? Are you testing for vulnerabilities and are you scanning for vulnerabilities in within your code and so on and so forth? You'll be surprised how many gaps there are in operations. And so what does it mean to get into DevOps? So there's two factors in DevOps. You have the developer side, you have the operation side. Sysadmins come in at the ops side, okay? Sysadmins work on SRE, which is a site reliability engineer. It's a glorified term for a sysadmin. Can you get into this can you make that transition from sysadmin to site reliability engineer? Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. If you've been working on PowerShell, if you've been working in Bash, if you've been working on Python, you're already 50% of the way there. The other half is adopting the mindset of the culture for DevOps. How much do DevOps people make? All DevOps people I know, they make at least 6 figures, okay? whether they're starting off or they're already seasoned, they make six figures because it's a very it's a very fixed focus job. It's a very fixed focus role because you're working with another part of organization on continuously driving code and production and things of that nature. So you're responsible from a site reliability standpoint. You're responsible for getting that application out. Okay, you're in ops. The operation side makes sure that the application makes it into production and post follow up. Okay, and you report if there's any sort of issues back to the developer. The developers will kick out a new process for a new build, and then they'll push it out to deployment and so on and so forth, and you'll play a significant role in the deployment aspect of that.
Hey, Mike.
Yep.
I just want to ask you something very, very quick. Do you see in DevOps or anything that you deal with, you have Bash, but do you see any AWK awk, SED set and Perl? You see any of that stuff around anymore or no?
Not necessarily. Everybody kind of works with because that's all front end stuff. It's all
right
stuff. So that's in DevOps, you're not really a front end.
Yeah, just in the front end. Yeah.
Full stack. You're a full stack person. Yeah. Most places they're PHP or they're PHP, JavaScript, and what do you call it? It's slipping my mind right now. They're PHP, JavaScript, and Java, and React. Okay, they call it mean stack, but basically React is another enhancement of JavaScript. But point that I'm making here is they adopt a stack of languages and technologies, and they focus just on that and that alone.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just wondering if you've seen it. Okay, I'm with you. I'm all the way with you on that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's where everyone is moving to. Most organizations are moving to that because the startups, the Facebooks and the Ubers and the SpaceXs and even NASA, for that matter, have a DevOps model. That's where they're going. That's how they're operating. And so when you think about transitioning from one role to another, what exactly are you transitioning to? Well, you're transitioning from a SysOps role, a network admin role, into adopting this, because most organizations that are moving into a DevOps culture will drag their sysadmins and their network admins into all of this, because even in cloud, you don't have traditional networking, you have what they call software-defined networks, SDNs. Mugen Black says, the Black Brain Trust, have you heard of languages like Julia? Word is they will replace Python. That's all subjective. People adopt what is sufficient for them in their architecture, in their organization. Julia might be good now, but then next year, the new top 10 list for 2021 of languages to learn, Julia becomes at the bottom all of a sudden, and then Python goes back up to the top. It's all subjective. It's all about what your capabilities are when it comes to development. If Python works just fine, especially with the latest iterations, from what I'm hearing, why stop using it?
They're not.
Companies don't jump around to different languages because it's trendy.
Definitely not. And in IT, you see that, and that's why we're still seeing it's a money piece, but I also think it's a fear piece as well. Why we're seeing some of this back end legacy stuff still around. I don't think it's all money. I think Bank of America and stuff like that, they got money. It's not like these guys can't change this around. They can easily put in 15, 20 million on a big IT change or migration or whatever. They can do it. They've got that money to do it. They can do it. They can do it.
It's not so much about money, it's about culture.
Culture, fear, what people are comfortable with, where they're used to going, and in corporate America that I've seen, and I've been in this thing for a minute. People are not used to making a lot of changes. They definitely are not. So Julia looks good. It may look very good. I've heard of it. But if Python is working really well and they're comfortable with it, that's where they're going to stay. They ain't going to run over there and say, well, we heard Julia works better. Yeah, okay. Well, we're comfortable where we are right now. And that's what we are.
A new company might
Maybe
that's looking to experiment with something that's currently out. They may adopt Julia if they haven't already started development. So that happens if you already adopted Python, you can't just switch because Julia, is hot. It's hot in the market right now. Now, is Julia better? From a performance standpoint, it probably is. But if you've already started development in Python, do you really want to switch out? It's really difficult. This is part of the reason why companies still use Java. Yeah, is C# better? C# is better than Java, but are you going to stop developing? You can't. You've already built your infrastructure and your environment around Java. You can't just stop because C# has become hot in 2020. It's just not how it works.
Yeah, there's a lot of C# out there. There's no question about it. But Java as it is right now ain't going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we'll see that 20 years from now. I hate to say it, but I think we will. It's crazy. I never thought we would have seen some of this back end legacy stuff still around, hanging around like a fart in a phone box, like it is today. But wow, it's still here. I mean, how long has COBOL been around, Mike? 50 years, maybe? I'm how many?
60.
60. Jesus, Christopher.
It was around before you were even born.
Jesus, Christopher. Wow. Anyway, serious business. Been around a long time.
Yeah, but that's the job of an enterprise architect. The enterprise architect looks at that and says, well, how do I replicate, how do I simplify the processes that's involved in this COBOL into small lines of code in let's say Java or some other language.
That's right.
That's their job.
That's right. That's right. Very important. Very important job. And very valuable to a company. Very valuable.
Yeah. To answer everybody's question, I mean, we went over enterprise architect, 6-figure roles. DevOps, 6-figure roles. So it doesn't matter where you go, you're going to get 6 figures from out of those roles.
And I just want to be clear, what Mike is saying is absolutely correct. You're not doing this overnight. Okay, it's not happening overnight. You got to put time in. I mean, if you even get a good, if you get pretty good at being a systems architect or so forth, and you've done this over a year or two or whatever, let's say you do luck up and get a job, you're not going to roll in and grab 6 figures off the top. That also is a function of time and experience. And it's these people who've dealt with a lot of different systems, who understand how they work, how they integrate and all that, that really become exceedingly valuable to a company. And it does take some time to do that. You got to get around a little bit. You got to be in a couple of different environments and see how things kind of roll. So that's kind of how that works. But it's 6 figures all day, every day, when you're at that level. So just want to say that. So I just want to just be clear on that. So anyone who's got any ideas or thinking about this, I'm not talking to the experienced guys in the room who know what time it is. For those who might be listening and want to get into it, because we definitely want people to be getting into this IT, but understand it's a time and development type of game. And we just want to be 100% clear so folks are not thinking this is an overnight, so presto changeo, and next thing you know, you're making 120 grand after 6 months. Okay, I want to be very realistic about it. That's it.
Yeah. I say to Musion Black, learn both Julia and Python. Python is really popular in the data science community because it works with R. Julia, not so much, because Julia doesn't necessarily meet the needs of a data science person. It really meets the needs of an app, an app developer's perspective. And so that's where that lies. For now, let me see if there's any other things in the chat going on. Yeah, Engineering Cannabis has it right. Python for AI has a shelf life of 10 years. What matters most is not the software, but the product the software produces. Yes. Yeah, it has to be also applicable to what you're trying to do. I mean, everybody can be, you can study all the stuff you want to, but if it's not applicable anywhere, it doesn't make any sense. Why learn to drive stick if every other car is going to be electric anyways? What's the point?
Facts.
Right. All right. Thank you all for joining us, man. I haven't seen anybody anybody else to join, but thank you all for joining us. Please hit the like button as you leave. There's a doc in the description beneath the video for you to reference. Also, if you are trying to get into IT for the first time, we do offer IT mentorship here. If you're trying to transition from one IT role to another, we do offer IT coaching in that area, and as well as salaries, wages, cover letters. We do offer advice in those areas as well. If you're in the tri-state area, you're looking for an IT contract, Nicole 11 does have recs on the table.
New recs coming in over the next 2 weeks, so just want to let you guys know that. So this shit's getting ready to heat up super high, so just putting that on the table as well.
All right, shalom.